educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century. How do we do that, given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. Many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind.
Say that you're doing it all wrong. In order to succeed, you have to look at everything with your own unique perspective. Okay? What does that mean? That means that when you think, you must think in your own creative way, not accepting everything that's already out there. He could have probably been some top scholar, he could have had a 4.0 GPA, he could have been on the dean's list, he could have had his professors proud, but he wouldn't have created anything if he didn't stop learning. Newton needed to start thinking and think of things with his own unique perspective in order to, create his theory.
Schools are still pretty much organised on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialised into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. We put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? Why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are?
It's important that everybody knows when they're growing up that there's certain times in your life when you have to conform. So yes, it is important that school promotes that you do know that you have to follow rules and abide by regulations. But I think schools do allow individuality. They allow students to be individuals. They allow teachers to have their own ways of bringing creativity into the classroom.
The main problem of regular schools is that it offers a standardized way of learning. So for example, every single person has to study the same exact subject as everybody else.
That there is one particular learning style for everybody, I think that's also misguided. I think there are children, young people, they learn in very different ways.
It's essentially about conformity, and increasingly it's about that as you look at the growth of standardised testing and standardised curricula. And it's about standardisation. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction.
And in Ireland, they seem more focused on completing a syllabus without paying much attention to creativity or extracurricular activities. Whereas in IB, you're not forced into it, but there's more opportunities to between your class and just opportunities within the school.
Often we're quite time limited, and if there's a student who's particularly interested in an idea and wants to develop that, then there isn't really time for that. If they want to be creative and investigate a particular experiment or something, again, there isn't time for that. That can be a disadvantage sometimes. We see our children advancing really well with homeschooling. We know exactly what they know, what they need to improve upon. That's a real benefit, and they're really enjoying it. And they're really working well together, playing well together, even though there's a difference in ages.
It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways.
About 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with this thing called autism. What that meant was I was focusing in things in such extreme detail that it seemed like I wasn't thinking at all. So people told me I would never learn, I'd never think, I'd never talk, I'd never tie my shoes. What they did was, because of that, they took me to special ed, which is extremely special in the fact it didn't educate me.
You have to recognise that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. If we atomise people and separate them and judge them separately, we form a kind of disjunction between them and their natural learning environment.
Although it may be the present educational systems current in most of the world are flawed. I accept that. They are on a journey, and maybe we'll get there.